It's good.
So, waiting here for it to hook on. Okay, Dennis Young here, part 2 by great Bill MacCormick here from all of these amazing records, Quiet Sun, Matching Mole, and of course, one of my favorite all-time live records of all time, 801 Live. Bill, thanks for coming back on.
It's a pleasure to be here.
So let's go now to the Random Hole again. I mean, we spoke a little bit about it. You had a tour with Peter and XTC. So did that fold up after one record, right?
Well, there was some. It was a strange band. I mean, I think it's fair to say. And
Right.
we had initially there was a 5-piece, and we did some demo tracks for a label called Polydor, and they signed us, which was fantastic, and they gave us a ridiculously big advance, equivalent.
Oh, that's great. That's good.
To £500,000. So what? $700,000 advance they get.
Holy smoke! Wow.
And in current prices, which was a lot, and we
wow.
We never paid it back. It was great.
I don't blame you.
And
I don't blame you.
About 3 weeks after we signed the deal, the two guys who'd started the band, which was David Rhodes, who went off to work with Peter Gabriel eventually, and the keyboard player David Ferguson, decided they were going to sack the drummer and the other guitar player, as you do. So a bit of a setback. We recruited a new drummer who had been in a thing called the Glitter Band with a guy called Gary Glitter, who we don't like to talk about because he's inside for various unpleasant activities with children.
Right.
But Pete Phipps, the drummer, was a great drummer, lovely man, very keen on tennis, and he joined us. And then we got to meet Peter Gabriel. He came down and saw us play, and he persuaded his management company to sign us, and for Genesis's publishers to sign us as well. So we had all sorts of deals done, and then we decided we'd record an album. We actually had enough material for a double album, and that wasn't what Polydor were expecting or indeed wanting. They thought they were going to get a solo album and a single.
Right.
So we went down to this recording studio in a place called Ascot, in this house that used to be owned by John Lennon and was then owned by Ringo Starr, and a place called Startling Studios. So I think I told you that the piano with Lucy in the Sky and Diamonds was written on this piano.
Yeah, you were telling me that. And then you had Peter Hamill do it, right? Producing?
Peter Hamill then, because Peter Gabriel had to do his own album. So, which was his third solo album. So Peter Hamill did it. It wasn't as good as we hoped it might be. We did the XTC tour, and then Gabriel asked us to be his support act around the UK, which we did, and then we came to North America in late July 1980, out to Los Angeles, and we played the Greek Theatre there, and then we toured around, did several dates in Canada, and we ended up at the Tower Theatre in Philadelphia. And at that point, we actually had signed with a little label in the States, a label called Passport. And,
I know them.
Yep, and they were very keen that we should stay over. They wanted us to go and do a tour of like clubs up and down the West Coast, build up hopefully a bit of a following. But the two Davids, whose band it really was, they wrote sort of 95% of the material, said, no, we're going to come home, we'll sort of reassess, and then maybe we'll go back out. Anyway, we came home, they reassessed, and they phoned me up and they sacked me. So, which was, one of those things. The only thing that they'd forgotten was that during the time before we had a record deal, I'd paid all the bills because I was the only person with any money, and they hadn't paid me back. So the day after they sacked me, I phoned up the management company and said, look, I need to come in and have a chat. And they went, yeah, fine. I sat down with Tony Smith, who was Genesis's manager, and with Peter's manager. And I said, look, they sacked me. And they went, you're joking? And I went, no. And they said, I'm owed about £40,000 equivalent thereof in me, and I want it back. And they went, fine. Wrote me a check, gave it to me, emptied the bank account, so there was no money left. At which point the band broke up. They rather cut their own throat. But on the other hand, we all knew that really what was going to happen was that David Rhodes was going to go off and work with Peter Gabriel.
Right.
David Ferguson, the keyboard player, carried on with a sort of like a new version of it, and they recorded another album for RCA, I believe it was. But they didn't really get anywhere. But of course, you know, the big thing was that Rhodes went off and worked with Peter, and as he still does. Funnily enough, I'm not a man who bears a grudge. Sometimes, and within about a month of sacking me, I was helping to produce some demo tapes for Dave Rhodes, and I was managing Dave Ferguson's new version of Random Hold. So I didn't hold it against them. But at the end of that year, and end of 1980, I decided I'd had enough. I didn't want to have to deal with horrible, pimply little record executives who knew nothing about. And I had had other interests.
Now, there was enough material for it. You said it was a double album. You had enough. Does that ever see the light of day? Any more of those songs?
It's been out. Polydor released a single album. Bizarrely, they I don't know if you remember the thing called the EP, the extended play, which was a single but with maybe 3 or 4 tracks on it.
That's what we were on. Yep, I know that well.
Did one of those, which we thought was a bit weird, and a single as well, none of which moved any records at all. Terrible. About 3 members of the Polydor A&R department got sacked on the basis of the fact that they'd given us so much money and not seen any of it back. So that was a bit of a problem. But we actually, a bit later on, after we'd left, after we'd broken up and left Polydor, Dave Ferguson organised a double vinyl pressing of the original idea of the double album. And then about 20 odd years ago, I got hold of all of the, not the multi-tracks, but the mixed down tapes, and also all of the demos that we'd done and some live stuff that I'd recorded for the Tower Theatre at Philadelphia. We recorded the last gig. And with a British company, I arranged to have a double and a single CD put out, which basically contained everything that Random Hold had ever played, including
I didn't know that.
The very, very original demo tapes, of which was just Dave Ferguson and David Rhodes, and which I put on for historic interest because basically they're absolutely unlistenable. But anyway, they're all there. I think somebody somewhere.
Now, is this out of print now? This record is this? Can you still get this record?
I think it's still available. But I mean, God knows whether, if anywhere, if the royalties go. One is called Random. One's called The View from Here, and that's
right.
That's the original double album plus the live performance at Philadelphia. And the other one is called Overview, and that's all of the demos we ever did through various lineups of the band, right to the last demos that the last quartet did just before we went to the States, which would have been, as it were, the basis of the next Random Hold album. So there's material throughout the entire life, and they're on. So you look them up; they're probably still available. Something like that.
Yeah, because I mentioned last time I saw you guys in New York with Peter Gabriel, and it was really a great show. You guys really were
we
really
hated
tight.
It. I tell you, we thought it was awful.
Oh, you did?
Yeah,
I thought it was good.
We didn't. We came off that one and we thought, oh, God, that I mean, we. Funnily enough,
you know, when you're a band, you get really picky on everything, and then
there's always. Yeah, that's right. If any small thing goes wrong, then you sort of tend to focus on that rather than go
right. Exactly.
So, I mean, in fact, there was one really embarrassing gig. We played Cleveland. I won't give it its name that I believe it's called by certain people, to do with a lake and a mistake. But anyway, afterwards, Dave Ferguson had made a big mistake at the beginning of one song. And for some reason, we were like 3/4 of the way through the tour and things were getting a little tense. And so in front of the record company, in front of the press people, in front of all of Peter Gabriel's band, and God knows how many people, Dave Ferguson and I had a screaming match.
Oh my gosh!
One side of the get it right.
Boy.
But on the other hand, we then went across the border. We went to Toronto. We played the Maple Leaf Gardens.
Oh my gosh! That's amazing.
a huge fan, absolutely rammed. And
the big hockey stadium, huh? Wow.
Yeah,
Arena. Wow.
It was huge. And we could have done an encore, which for a support band is kind of unusual. And we decided not to, though our manager was saying, no, go back on. No, we were saying, no. And then we played in Ottawa, and we did do an encore, which once again, I think for a support band is really quite unusual. At which point, the next gig,
Peter Gabriel usually get booed off the stage, get off the stage.
Well, he'd gone on. He'd been introducing us every night, and after that one, he said, "We don't need introducing; you can do it yourselves."
That's amazing. Yeah, he was great about that.
Yeah, well,
he was always
the live recording at the Tower Theatre in Philadelphia. He comes on and he does a very funny sort of little monologue about how this is the last time I have to introduce this band, which is just as well because they're dreadful, and I don't know why.
That's
so it was good, and that was it, and I got out the music business.
And you guys were, it's pretty hard at times, especially working with other musicians, and when there's a lot of tension and big money at stake, tours, and you got to be at your best, and little things go wrong, and it sets a fire, and boom.
Yeah, that tends to be the issue. I think you focus on little stuff and blow it out of proportion.
Right.
And basically, I mean, you're just going from one hotel room to another hotel room. You've got nobody's company but the rest of the band. Got nobody to talk to. No pressure release as well. So, if you get on really well, that's okay. But even that gets strained after a while. So, it's one of those things. But I'd always wanted to tour the States. I toured the States.
That's great.
Peter was brilliant. I mean, we went everywhere with him. We stayed in the same hotels as him.
Oh, how about that? That's better yet. Yeah, that's great.
He said, he had all these sort of riders on his contract about food and drink and everything else, and he insisted that we had exactly the same as he had.
So you guys went first class, right? No,
brilliant. It was the best way to do a tour as a support band. Anybody who works with Peter Gabriel will know he is the nicest man you'll ever meet.
How about that? That's great to hear. There are some good people in the business of music.
Oh, he's lovely. Absolutely lovely.
Like anything, that is really great. So let's move on then. You got out of music and you went into politics, right?
Well, that's the obvious move, isn't it, for a sort of redundant bass player is to get into politics.
There you go.
I'd always had an interest in politics when I was like a teenager. I joined. I joined the what used to be called the Liberal Party in this country in 1973.
Okay.
I actually ran in a local council election in the following year with hair down to here. Which,
how about that?
When I went and knocked on doors and invited people to vote for me, they kind of looked at me and went, no, you don't need a sort of long-haired hippie.
Yeah, you have to be a good salesman of you. You really have to sell yourself to be a politician. You got to be good at that.
But I mean, the thing about it was that I did it, and at the end of it, I thought there's got to be more to running an election campaign than what's just happened. So I started investigating it and finding sort of stuff out about actually how you should be running elections, which then when I left music, I began to employ. And I found actually that I was pretty good at it. So within about a couple of years, I was...
And then were you at...
Sorry, yeah.
So did you meet the Prime Minister and all the big shots there? And
not so much there. No, I mean I worked closely with all the MPs for the Liberal Party and the leader of the party and everything else, and I ran election campaigns.
How about that?
And the first thing, the one thing that I did do was that I can lay claim to is that I was the first employee of the Liberal Party to ever own a computer. And what a computer it was hilarious. It was, I don't know, it was supposedly one that you could move around, and it weighed, I don't know how many pounds. It was just so heavy, tiny little screen, yellow and characters on it. Right. And floppy disk drives. It was the bee's knees. It was fabulous. But as a result of that, I became as immediately adopted as the party's computer expert, which was quite funny, given the fact that I knew about as little about them as anybody else did.
Computer guy, huh?
Yeah. And then I started running computer campaigns and elections, doing direct mail and all sort of targeted stuff and things like that. And then about 1980, I got elected onto my local council as well. So I was working. I was full-time work for the party. And I was also a councillor. And then I started a polling company because we didn't have any polling organisation. And so we set up a polling company. We did all of the market research for the Liberal Party for about 8 years until the general election in 1997, where I was able to tell the party leader, a gentleman who sadly recently died, called Paddy Ashdown, that in spite of what the polls said, which was that we were going to lose seats, we were actually going to more than double the number that we got. And he said, how many? And I said, I think you're going to get between 46 and 48 seats. And he said, he went, okay. Didn't believe a word I was saying. And the next day we got 47. So I was quite pleased. And that was basically my last involvement in politics.
I was going to ask you about that. That was it, huh? 1997, 98, that was it.
Yeah, I got ill.
Oh, you did? Okay.
I got pneumonia, a bit of a come down after the intensity of the election campaign when I was sort of working. Basically, I was doing nights, writing reports, getting them to the party bigwigs in the morning, going home, sleeping during the daytime, going back, etc., etc. That went on for several months. And it all got a bit too much. And I got pneumonia, and basically I probably had a bit of a breakdown personally. And it then was discovered I had some sort of strange blood condition, and which meant that I, basically didn't go back to work. So at which point I started looking around for other interests, and at which point then I discovered that I was fascinated by the First World War, and that's what I've been doing pretty much ever since, looking into that and researching it and writing books about it. So there we go.
Yeah, I see that. You're an author too. So the book, the Somme, that really attracted you, right? World War I. What brought you to that period of time?
Well, one of those strange things. When I was very little, we lived in the same street as my grandfather. He lived down the road. And he had lost the use of his right arm. We never knew why. I never knew why. He died when I was 10, so I never got a chance to ask him. But there was a picture on the wall in their living room, and turned out it was a famous action in the First World War in about November 1914. We assumed because his family come from a tiny little island off the west coast of Scotland called Iona, which is quite a famous, even though it's tiny, it's where most of the kings of Scotland are buried. And it was the first place that St. Columba, who brought Christianity to Scotland, landed when he came across from Ireland. So it's got a big abbey. It's a tiny island, beautiful little island, but it's tiny. It's hardly anybody lives on there. And most of the people who live there have still got my surname. So anyway, so we assumed that he had joined a Scottish regiment in the First World War and something had happened to him, but never really investigated it. And I say he died before we talked to him. But I did used to go into their rather dark and gloomy living room, front room rather, in their house, and in a little box there was a medal. I've got it here actually. Let me find it. Where's it gone? I've lost it. Oh, I've mislaid it. No, that can't be good. Anyway, I'll find it. Oh, there it is. Okay. Here it is. So I used to open this and wonder what it was that my grandfather had done to win that.
Oh, boy.
And what that is a thing called the Military Cross, and it was actually established during the First World War. Wow. For officers. It was only for officers. And it's the second level down from a thing called the Victoria Cross. And the Victoria Cross, the supreme award for bravery. And so I knew that he had this medal, but I didn't know why, until sometime in the mid-1990s. And my father was going through some papers, and they found a little diary, a little red diary. And it turned out that my grandfather had taken this when he'd gone to France in 1915. And against all the relevant orders, he'd written in pencil what had happened on a day-by-day basis. And that included going over the top and a big battle on the 15th of September 1915 at a place called Loos.
Wow.
Where he wasn't in the front line, but he was one of the support soldiers that went across. Really one of those coincidences. He got halfway across no man's land and he met another soldier coming back. Turned out it was his future brother-in-law. One of those sort of weird small worlds. They had a little chat, as you do, in the middle of no man's land, in the middle of a big battle where on that one day 15,000 British soldiers were killed or wounded.
Oh man.
And we went, and then a few years later, I was fortunate. I took my dad out to France, and we went to all the places that were mentioned in this diary. And we walked down the roads that my grandfather had walked down. We stayed in places near where he'd stayed.
Wow, that must have been incredible.
And then also we went down to the battlefield of the Somme. And it was there on the 12th of September 1916 that my grandfather had won his military cross. And it was there 13 days later that he was nearly killed by a machine gun, which wrecked his right arm. And he was put into a ward they called the moribund ward, which is where they put people they assumed were going to die, filled up with morphine and left. He was still alive the following morning, so they took him out and they treated him, and he got home. So that started my interest, and then it turned out that my mother's cousin had been in a regiment that went over the top on the 1st of July 1916, which is the first day of the Battle of the Somme, and that's also the worst day in the history of the British Army. 57,000 soldiers were killed or wounded.
In one day?
In a few hours.
God.
19,000 were killed in the space probably of about 4 hours. And my mother's
that reminds me of Gettysburg. You know, that maybe wasn't as many. Pretty close. Yeah, wow.
Well, it's it's correct. But my mother's cousin disappeared. He was never found. His name's on a memorial. There are 73,000 names of men whose bodies were never found during the Battle of the Somme, and that triggered my interest specifically in the unit that he was involved in.
Okay.
And so
that is really something.
After about 6 years, I wrote this book, which
that's it. Okay.
And that includes an account of what happened to his unit. It's I don't know. Well, I've written one short book, but this one's they're all about 700 or 800 pages. So I did that one, and then about 2 years later, I did that one. Which,
wow.
These two units attacked the same village from different directions, and it was a diversion. It was an absolute catastrophe. They both lost.
Wow, that's incredible.
And the commanding general was a man called Snow, and he was the great grandfather of a guy who does TV shows in this country. He was a historian, and so about when was it? I think it was 2014. So the 100th anniversary, I think it was. I was invited, and I went and did a TV program with them out in France about this particular attack on the 1st of July. So actually, I must get a copy of that one, BBC.
Is that on YouTube at all? Can you see it somewhere?
I don't know. It might be
great to watch.
It might be.
I'm gonna look.
So I did that, and then I did a third book. I sort of decided I just stuck on the same day, 1st of July, because it is so catastrophic, and it's such an important day in British military history that I sort of worked my way down a bit, and I did another book, which is over there. And then I was going to do carry on the series, but there was a pause of 10 years. And then suddenly, where I was working up some various ideas, and then suddenly this last few months, it's all gone a bit mad. So
you started work again?
Well, I've been
time?
working all the time. It's just that I started off with one idea, and then it developed into another idea, and then it expanded. So what started out as like a one-volume account of why the British did so badly on the first day of the Battle of the Somme, but at the same time the French did unbelievably well and only lost a couple of thousand men and gained everything, all their objectives. I wanted to understand why that might have been the case, so I started researching that. And that took me back into the 19th century, to the Franco-Prussian War of 1870-71 and all sorts. And then the Boer War in 1899.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
The the Russo-Japanese War in 1904-05 and all sorts. And then I got diverted again because I found a funny little isolated French action right in the first 10 days of the war, about which not even the French have written. And that came. Whoops, where are we? That came out in March.
Oh, okay.
And that's the smallest book I've written. It's only about 250 pages.
Oh my gosh!
Something wrong with me there. And then just got today the first volume of a 2-volume account of
that you wrote,
which I've written, and that's volume 1. That'll be out at the end of this month.
Wow.
That's 900 pages, that one. And then volume 2, which I'm just in the process of finishing, will be out thereafter, and that's 800 pages. So, and in between, because once you get going, of course, I produce that, which is my of my time in the music business.
Oh, I got to pick that up too. That's available too, right? That's a lot of pages.
You can buy that on Amazon. You can even buy it as a Kindle publication. So I've done all that. So and
I'm
then
going to buy it as soon as I get off this program here.
That was fun. I'd written sort of some isolated stories about things like random hold or matching mold put them up on Facebook. And every time I did it, somebody'd come back and say, "Look, why not write a book?" So this time last year, I kind of thought, okay, so why not? So I already had a certain amount, and actually it was the quickest book I've ever written, and I had it finished in 3 months. It was fun to write. I have to say, it's brought back some good memories. And so there we go.
Well, I didn't have this record out the last time, but who is this? Mike Fritz Henry gets a big plug in that record. Was he responsible for a lot of the? He was the engineer. Recording?
Yeah, he was the engineer. And he had to put up with the most amazing rubbish, because I think I might have mentioned we'd signed to CBS really because CBS had Robert on contract and really didn't know what to do with him. And so they were building this new recording studio, which we used for the second Mole album. But the first Mole album was recorded in their old studio in Bond Street, which was falling apart. It was just dreadful.
Okay.
The sort of 24-track tape machines were running at variable speeds. The heating had gone. It was the middle of winter. We had power cuts because there was a miners' strike going on. There was government, all sorts of active problems between the miners and the government. And it took us a hell of a long time to finish. But Mike was the ever-patient engineer who somehow managed to get us through it all with a cheerful grin and a useful word and a decent knowledge of what he was up to as well. So yeah, he was quite an important character. I don't know that we would have got it done anything like the way we did without him. And he also did a lot of stuff because Robert, I always regard that first Matching Mole album as really actually as Robert's second solo album.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Because an awful lot of it was done when the rest of us weren't there. We knew nothing about it. We'd come in and he'd say, "Right, I've done this."
I see. So he was doing a lot of work on it, and then you guys came in afterwards too.
I think there was a couple of tracks that Phil Miller wrote, and then there was obviously Caroline that Robert and Dave Sinclair wrote together. But an awful lot of it also was just Robert in the studio by himself, particularly the end of the second side, the big Mellotron piece, which one of the saddest pieces of music I've ever.
I know it is. And Mellotron can make things really sad.
Oh, it is. It really tugs at the old heartstrings. Every now, it's one of those things you can't listen to and not have a tear in your eye, basically. Particularly if you know the background of what was going on in Robert's life. It makes it all the more emotional. So it's I think it's really Robert's second solo album. Matching Mole, the Little Red Record is the Matching Mole album. So there's really only one Matching Mole album, even though there's two.
Right, here we go. This is it right here.
That one. Yeah, that was a corporate album. Everybody contributed.
The back, yeah, there it is. Robert Fripp produced.
Robert Fripp, and of course with guest superstar actress Julie Christie. What more could you ask for? I mean, you know, my teenage heartthrob, standing on the opposite side of the recording studio with my tongue hanging out, panting. Well,
I imagine with Fripp there, boy.
I mean, it's great because I actually carried on. I knew her for several years, and in where was it? 75. I was actually doing some work with Charles Hayward, the ex-Quiet Sun drummer, on a thing that he was putting together. And I got a phone call. I don't know how they tracked me down. How she tracked me down, I don't know. Anyway, it was Julie saying, "Look, Warren Beatty's in London, and
oh wow,
staying at Claridge's, and he wants me to go back to LA with him because they had been sort of partners for a while, and he wants me to meet him so that he can persuade me. And I've said to him, I will only talk to you if you," because I'd interviewed her because she was very anti-nuclear power, as was I, as I still am. And so I'd interviewed her for a newspaper called the New Musical Express, which my brother was the assistant editor of. And so she knew I was interested in politics and everything else. And so she said, "Yeah, I've told Warren that you've got to be interviewed by me, by Bill, and otherwise I won't meet you." And so he's agreed. So if you can get up to Claridge's in the next hour, he's in his suite, which is the suite, and he'll talk to you. So, okay, right. He's only prepared to talk about American politics, nothing to do with girlfriends, cinema. Okay. Because of course in those days, run up to the 76 election, he was very, very heavily involved in sort of that Hollywood end of Democrat politics. So I jumped on a train, got up to Claridge's, got taken up to his suite, which was like the entire first floor of Claridge's. It was the biggest thing I've ever seen. Olympic size, full size. I mean, it was vast. And I went in there, and you could tell that, I was thinking, "Oh God, I've really got to put up with this. This idiot's going to come and talk to me about something he knows nothing about." Thankfully, I actually did know something about it. So we sat down, and he said, "I can give you about 15, 20 minutes. I went, "That's fine." Hour later, we were still talking. And so I got to meet him as a result of knowing Julie. And then I went out to the States, and I did some stuff. I covered sort of some stuff in LA, and I went to meet some radicals in New York, and I spent some time with her out there because she was about to go and do a film. So it was good. It was a very lovely. Once again, one of the loveliest people you'll ever meet in your life.
Little Red Record was basically really the Matching Mole record. He said that Robert Wyatt first Matching Mole was like his solo second record.
That's what I believe. Yeah, I mean, there was material by other people on the first Mole album, but it was mainly Robert. The whole thing was driven by him. Whereas over the next 4 or 5 months, with Dave McRae replacing Dave Sinclair as the keyboard player, Dave McRae was a very good composer. He started coming forward with ideas. Phil Miller was always coming up with ideas. I decided I had to compete, so I started writing stuff as well. And Robert actually, at the time, seemed quite happy with that. He would write lyrics for things that needed them, which for several songs that was the case. And other than that, he seemed sort of fairly happy to assume the role as the drummer, basically, and which is the way. And so that whole album came out with no music by Robert, but a lot of lyrics by Robert, and then music by all the music.
Oh, I didn't know that.
The other three, everybody else composed. Yeah. So that was, I say, in my view, that's the only proper matching Mole album.
Yeah, you guys did a great job on that. Fantastic record, and it's historically just a really set in time progressive music at that time. That was part of that whole era.
Yeah, there was some interesting stuff around at that point. Obviously what Fripp was doing with King Crimson. I lost it with bands like Yes fairly quickly, but the Yes album, which was their second, I think, great record, fantastic, fantastic playing on it. I saw them do it live, brilliant. You know, what a bunch of musicians they were. Well, they are still. I mean, not all of them, sadly. Chris Squire is long gone, which is a great shame, because he was a brilliant player and a very unique bass player as well. So yeah, there was some interesting stuff going down at that time. I don't know. I'd like to think that the young kids nowadays have got the similar array of different types of music available to them, because you look at what was going on back in those days, the 60s and the early 70s. There was so much variety. I mean, white music,
imagine,
and also not just in white music, but then there's so much quality in black music in those days, which, frankly, sadly, it's one of the great shames of modern music, is I don't hear it now. I don't see that great tradition of black soul music and Tamla and R&B and everything else. I don't see it carrying on, but that's just me.
No.
I'm an old fuddy-duddy in that respect.
Well, I got the first Hatfield North record at a record store in the States, and then that's how I found Robert, and in this record and other records, and it's just a whole realm of really great music.
Yeah, there was a whole, and it was actually like a floating population of people who would sort of coalesce and then drift apart and come back again, you know, surrounding Hatfield and Gong and the Soft Machine and Matching Mole and everything else, and we were all sort of cross fertilizing, as it were.
Right.
And yeah, I think it was a fairly exciting time. I mean, if you like that sort of thing, I mean, sometimes that you could have a bit too much of it. We had a few gigs where Matching Mole played with Soft Machine and various other spin-offs of Soft Machine gigs. And I can imagine if I was part of the audience, it would be like being slapped around the face repeatedly and told, "This is culture. Enjoy it." You know. Whereas actually, it was.
Did you open up for? Did you guys open up for any bands that just didn't match up with? I got a pun here. Matching Mole match. Did you guys match up with any groups that you'd said, "Oh, why are we playing with this band"? Did you get?
We tended. We tended. I mean, even in the early days, actually, we tended to be either playing gigs on our own, or there would be a support band for us. Even though we weren't pulling in initially, at least, you know, particularly big audiences, it was different in Europe. We got very good crowds in Europe, less initially in the UK. I can't recall thinking, "God blimey, how on earth." It's not like, for example, I remember a random hold gig where we supported a band called the Trogs.
Oh, I remember them.
Whose hit single was "Wild Thing."
Yeah, one.
Yeah. That didn't seem somehow. That didn't seem somehow inappropriate.
That's right.
Mix. But anyway, we did. They were lovely guys. I mean, we got on very well with them. They were still playing "Wild Thing" in 1978, which was 12 years old.
I'm sure.
Single, but no, I don't think. I can't remember Mole playing. I mean, we did some festivals where perhaps I don't really pay much attention to who else was on. Frankly, you played the gig and then you'd go home. I mean, I'll go back to the hotel or wherever it was you were. So I say the only one I do remember is deliberately avoiding watching Genesis in.
Did you
France once?
Did you see Genesis play with Peter?
I didn't know. We were playing the same festival down in the south or in sort of east of France, a place called Montbéliard, and they were on next, and I was offered the chance of watching them, staying in the hotel, and then we were playing in Rotterdam in 2 nights' time, and then driving the next day to Rotterdam, or I could drive overnight with a road crew to Rotterdam. So I drove overnight with a road crew to Rotterdam to avoid having to watch Genesis, because I absolutely loathed Peter.
That's right. I remember that.
Prancing around with a fox's head on.
That's right.
I mean, I just thought that was ridiculous. Whereas, of course, perversely, his solo work, I just think is wonderful. I mean,
yeah, it is.
But Genesis I found irritating, because you could tell. I mean, they were all brilliant musicians, and as it turns out, having met them and worked with them, they were all really lovely people.
Right. They were
incredibly good at what they did. But I used to find them very frustrating, because they would play these incredibly ornate, complicated arrangements, and you'd think, oh, that's a lovely melody there. Stretch out on it, just ease into it, just let it expand and grow.
Right.
And then they'll be on to something else, another twiddly bit. And I hated that sort of relentless. I just sort of, to a certain extent, it became, which is what I actually, sadly, I thought happened to Yes. It became a display of technique rather than musicality. And it's like certain, it's like people doing shredding on guitar. Basically, all they're doing is bloody high-speed scales. Frankly, you train your fingers, anybody can do it. There's no musicality involved very much in that. I mean, I like, Phil Manzanera, not technically, and I think he'll admit this, the world's greatest lead guitar.
No, he isn't, but
he thinks, he creates, he wants to create a mood, an atmosphere. He tries unusual combinations of notes and everything else.
He's a brilliant player.
He's thoughtful. He's always worth listening to because you never quite know. He never does it to a formula. And I think an awful lot of other musicians end up playing to a formula. And that gets boring. Once you've heard it, you've heard it.
He thinks about the notes he's going to play.
Yeah.
That's what really separates him. And one of my all-time favorite records.
Yeah. Well,
the energy in that record is.
Well, say it's 50th anniversary.
That was something I was really. Now, are you coming out with? You said some more 801 material from this.
Well, what we're looking at, we've got two projects. I was speaking to Phil earlier today.
Right.
First of all, next year is the 50th anniversary of the release of the Quiet Sun album. Okay. So we are looking at a reissue of that with extra material, and we are hoping with new material. The four original members of the band, we got together on Zoom a few months ago, and we've agreed that that's what we'll do for release this time next year. And we're all going to go away and write a new piece for Quiet Sun. And
that should be exciting.
That will be recorded at Phil's studio, hopefully in the new year. So that should all come out, and there'll be vinyl versions, there'll be CD versions, and there'll be booklets and all sorts, you name it. And then the following year is, of course, the 50th anniversary of the 801 Live album. And Phil has recently managed to liberate from Universal, who own the rights to it, the multi-tracks of the actual concert, and also the sound of the 4 tracks that we played during the sound check. So there's more material.
I can't wait to hear that.
Yeah.
So more material from this kind of music that was,
you
guys, that's going to be great.
And we've got some other bits and pieces. We found, I was contacted a few days ago on Facebook by a guy who said, we did a tour the following year, which was to promote one of Phil's solo albums, an album called Listen Now. And we played a gig in a place called Hull up in Yorkshire. And Hull is the birthplace of the guy who used to play violin and keyboards for Roxy Music, then went off and worked with Frank Zappa, a guy called Eddie Johnson.
Oh, yeah. I know him.
Yeah, and Eddie turned up at the gig we played in Hull and joined us on stage for the encore, which was a version of Out of the Blue, Phil's Roxy Music song. And it turns out that we didn't know this. I'd recorded it on a cassette tape, and that was not great recording, as you can imagine. But it turned out, and we've only just discovered this, however many years, sort of 47 years after the event, or whatever it is, that 2 students at the university had put a variety of microphones that we knew nothing about around the stage, and they'd recorded it all. Much better sound quality, we think. This guy's digitized.
Oh, that's great.
So we may have it, and also they recorded a sound check where apparently the version of Out of the Blue that we did with Eddie was much better than the one we actually did at the end of the set when we played. Hoping to get hold of that. So things like that will also incorporate into a new 801 Live release. Hopefully.
Well, your fans are going to love that.
Well,
I'm going to love it. I can't wait to hear it because I'm a big fan. I tell you, and I saw Eddie Jobson with UK.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I mean, Eddie's a great player.
He's just absolutely a genius there. Playing violin and great show with when Bill Bruford played, and Alan Holdsworth, another one.
That's right. Yeah, yeah.
So you were part of a really great scene of musicians back then. It's just, you're part of the history.
How I got away with it, who knows? I mean,
I don't know, but you did. You played great. So, Bill, this has been a real pleasure. And so that's what's coming up, and your books. Where can we find your books at?
Well, the books are all on Amazon, but you have to bear in mind that my military history books are
Amazon
they're on Amazon, but they're written under my middle names. My middle names are Alan MacDonald, and the reason why I do that is because my late brother was a proper writer. My late brother was, for a period, he was the assistant editor of the New Musical Express in the early 70s, and he wrote a book which I think, by general consensus, is regarded. Oh, that's the French version I'm just about to pick up. Is possibly one of the best books, if not the best book on the Beatles. And it's called Revolution in the Head. There we go. And, And basically, he dissects every single Beatles track, puts both musically and in the sort of culturally and the social background, the political background. It's sort of down to him effectively now that I write, and so I write under the names of Alan MacDonald because he wrote as Ian MacDonald, because when he was the assistant editor of the New Musical Express.
What's it under again, Alan?
Alan MacDonald.
Okay.
What I write it. He used to write.
Got it. Okay, MacDonald. Okay.
Yeah, he used to write as Ian MacDonald because he was the assistant editor of the NME when Matching Mole was around. And he reviewed all our albums, and he thought it would look pretty bad if Ian MacCormick was saying what a great band his brother was in. So he called himself.
That's funny. Well, we got to look for that. I'll make.
Yeah. So Revolution.
I'll put that in the notes there because those are incredibly long books. I mean, you're quite a writer, man. I
was kind of surprised looking at the pile of
number what?
Britt, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them so far, and 2 more due. So
wow.
And 2 more due. Actually, there's a couple more actually a bit further away next year. They'll be out. So
We'll keep in touch. You're a prolific writer, musician. Thank you for being on. There have been a few technical difficulties.
Nah, no problem.
But I appreciate it, and maybe I'll see some other artists from your period come on because it's been quite an experience talking to artists like you. So thank you for doing this.
It's been a pleasure. I'll contact Mr. I'll send the details through to Mr. Manzanera, and hopefully he'll contact you.
I hope so. Yeah, I'd love to hear his story too.
Oh yeah.
Okay, Bill. Nice talking to you, and have a good evening.
And you.
Take care now.
Bye.
Bye-bye.